Hey, welcome to Vice Grip Garage. I'm your unreliable host, Derek. The old finger remover 4000. Extra CFMs.
There are stories online that shock people, but few hit as deeply as the fall of Derek Bieri, the man behind Vice Grip Garage, the channel that inspired millions to pick up tools, revive forgotten machines, and believe in second chances. For years he was the friendly face of the DIY automotive world, humble, hopeful, and never afraid to get covered in grease to save a classic from disappearing forever. People trusted Derek. They admired his honesty. They saw him as the kind of guy who cared more about keeping old cars alive than making money. That's why the world reeled in disbelief when headlines exploded across social media. Vice Grip Garage creator sentenced to life imprisonment. How? Why? What could possibly transform a respected automotive hero into a man shackled in handcuffs and condemned to spend the rest of his life behind bars? The answers turned out to be darker, more twisted, and more heartbreaking than anyone expected. Federal agents. Forged titles. Stolen cars. A mysterious business partner who vanished into thin air. A paper trail pointing straight at Derek, whether he knew it or not. And a justice system that seemed more interested in wrapping the case quickly than finding the real truth. This is the story of how a man who dedicated his life to saving cars ended up losing everything. A story about trust, betrayal, and a system that convicted Derek long before a jury did. Long before millions subscribed to Vice Grip Garage, Derek Bieri was just another small-town mechanic. Raised in rural Minnesota, he spent his youth wrenching in barns, learning the language of engines, and discovering the joy that came from resurrecting machines most people called junk. His early adult life was anything but glamorous. Derek worked in small repair shops, moved into management roles, and even tried settling into the corporate automotive world. On paper, things looked stable, but behind the scenes, he was suffocating. Corporate meetings replaced engine noise. Policies replaced passion. The job was secure, but the joy was gone. By 2018, Derek couldn't take it anymore. He walked away, choosing uncertainty over unhappiness. With nothing but a gravel driveway, a used toolbox, and an old camera phone, he launched Vice Grip Garage online. He didn't plan to become famous. He didn't plan to change the internet. He just wanted to bring old cars back to life, and maybe inspire someone else to try it too. What happened next surprised even him. The world fell in love with his raw, no-nonsense style. No acting. No stage drama. Just real wrenching, real failures, and real triumphs. Derek spoke like a friend, worked like a warrior, and treated every car, no matter how rusty, as something worth saving. His channel grew into an empire. Sponsors lined up. TV networks came calling. Millions tuned in to watch the man with the mustache revive engines that hadn't run in decades. Life was good. Better than good, it was perfect. But no rise comes without shadows. And Derek was about to step straight into one he never saw coming. By 2021, Derek wanted to expand. He'd already built one of the biggest automotive channels online. Now he dreamed bigger, something like a full restoration series featuring historic American cars, tracing stories through the engines, panels, and decades they survived. The opportunity came unexpectedly, a seller in the Midwest offering a giant collection of classic vehicles, dozens of them, from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The kind of cars that deserved a second chance. The kind of cars that Derek loved most. It was the perfect foundation for a new Vice Grip Garage series. Derek brought in a few trusted partners, friends he'd known for years. Together, they pooled money, contacted sponsors, and coordinated logistics. Since Derek was the public face of the operation, everyone agreed he would be the primary name on the paperwork. Signatures. Titles. Insurance. Bills of sale. All of it bore one name, Derek Bieri. And why not? These were his friends. This was his dream. This was the next chapter. They flew out to inspect the lot. They walked through rows of rusted gold. Some cars were surprisingly solid. Others were barely recognizable. But each one carried potential. Content. History. Stories waiting to be told. The deal went through. The cars were transported. The project was underway. Excitement was high. Sponsors were preparing announcements. Filming schedules were drafted. But then, the phone call came. A routine VIN check on one of the vehicles came back flagged. Stolen. Not recently, but years earlier. Investigators wanted answers. Derek provided everything. The titles looked legitimate. The documents had seals, signatures, notary marks, all the things that made them official. But forensic examiners found something terrifying. The documents were expertly forged. They weren't amateur fakes. They weren't slapped-together scams. They were professional-level forgeries connected to a long-running vehicle theft ring operating across multiple states. And the worst part? The partner who handled most of the paperwork vanished. It didn't take long for the situation to escalate. Federal agents and state investigators descended on Derek's property with search warrants in hand. They seized computers, phones, hard drives, filing cabinets, anything that could contain clues. They dug into years of vice grip garage videos. Tracked VIN numbers shown on camera. Scrutinized every car purchase Derek ever made. What started as one stolen vehicle quickly became a full-scale federal investigation. Multiple cars in the collection had shady paperwork, missing history, or mismatched VINs. A pattern emerged, one tied not to Derek, but to the mysterious partner who'd vanished the moment authorities got involved. But investigators didn't care about that. They cared about the name on the documents. And that name was Derek's. The internet got hold of the story next. And if the legal process was harsh, the public reaction was vicious. Forums exploded. Reddit threads multiplied. YouTube comment sections melted down with accusations. You fraud. You liar. You stole cars for views. I knew he was fake. People Derek had inspired for years turned against him overnight. Journalists twisted clips to match the narrative. Critics sharpened their knives. Sponsors backed out instantly. The Motor Trend deal? Suspended. Brand partnerships? Cancelled. Future episodes? Dead. Financial collapse hit like a tidal wave. Personal threats followed. Someone leaked Derek's address. People drove past his home filming. Packages with disturbing messages arrived. His family fled their house in fear. The same audience that once adored him now tore him apart, without waiting for a single court verdict. Meanwhile, Derek's lawyers begged him to stay silent. But silence looked like guilt. And guilt spread like wildfire. The real orchestrator of the fraud, the partner who disappeared, watched from wherever he ran, untouched and unnoticed, while Derek's life burned to ash. 18 months after the investigation began, the trial opened to packed courtrooms and endless media coverage. Derek arrived already defeated, financially drained, reputation destroyed, and public opinion poisoned. The prosecution was relentless. They pointed to hundreds of documents bearing Derek's signature, titles, transfers, purchase agreements, insurance forms. To them, this wasn't one innocent mistake. It was a massive, ongoing criminal operation cloaked behind a YouTube channel. They presented a narrative so dark it felt surreal. Derek wasn't a hero saving cars. He was a mastermind moving stolen vehicles under the disguise of entertainment. Every barn find became suspicious. Every cheap deal became evidence of illegal sourcing. Every enthusiastic reaction became calculated performance. Then came the witnesses. First, the missing partner. He magically resurfaced, on the prosecution's side. He claimed Derek orchestrated everything. Said Derek knowingly bought stolen cars. Said Derek used YouTube to cover his tracks. He avoided prison by testifying. Next came a former colleague. She claimed Derek ignored her warnings about suspicious documents. She said he brushed it off and prioritized content creation over legality. With every testimony, Derek's innocence looked thinner. His defense argued he was a victim, another pawn caught in a fraud scheme that started long before he arrived. They brought character witnesses, experts, and even fans who insisted Derek never acted like a criminal. But the jury didn't care. 3 days of deliberation. Guilty. On all counts. Then came the sentencing. The judge delivered the words that echoed across the internet. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Gasps. Shouts. Camera flashes. Derek was led away in handcuffs as reporters trampled each other to get a shot of the fallen YouTube icon. Vice Grip Garage was removed from platforms pending legal review. His financial accounts were frozen. His reputation obliterated. But buried deep in the evidence boxes were clues no one bothered to examine. Clues that proved Derek was not the villain in this story. 3 months after sentencing, a man named Robert Callahan stepped forward with information that should have changed everything. He wasn't a fan of Derek. He wasn't a friend. He wasn't seeking attention. He was simply a classic car enthusiast who recognized something during trial coverage. The forged titles used against Derek were identical to forged titles Callahan encountered 7 years earlier. Back in 2015, Callahan almost purchased a vintage Chevrolet from a seller operating through private listings. Everything looked legit: paperwork, signatures, notary seals. But a DMV official spotted subtle inconsistencies. The title was fake. The documentation was forged. The seller disappeared before police could question him. Callahan filed a police report. He turned over all documents. He gave investigators everything. And the report was ignored. It sat untouched for years while the fraud ring continued operating, sending forged vehicles through buyers like Derek who had no idea they were walking into a trap. Callahan contacted Derek's lawyers, providing his original forged documents. Forensic experts confirmed. The same criminal network that scammed Callahan had supplied the cars Derek purchased. This wasn't Derek's scheme. This was a long-running fraud operation law enforcement failed to stop years before. Had Callahan's warning been taken seriously in 2015, Derek would never have bought those cars. Derek would never have been investigated. Derek would never have gone to prison. News outlets began picking up the story. Wrongful conviction groups showed interest. Petitions spread demanding a new trial. The narrative started shifting. From Derek the criminal, to Derek the victim of systemic negligence. But the justice system moves slowly, especially when admitting it made a catastrophic mistake. The consequences of Derek's conviction didn't end with him. They rippled outward, affecting everyone who had ever stood near Vice Grip Garage. His wife changed her name and moved states to escape harassment. His children transferred schools under new identities. His friends were interrogated, drained financially, and publicly shamed. Some lost jobs. Some left the automotive industry forever. Some faced mental health crises. Sponsors launched internal audits. Companies severed ties abruptly. Influencer marketing agencies tightened rules, terrified of another Bieri incident. The classic car community suffered too. Buyers became paranoid. Sellers grew hostile. Prices dropped. Insurance premiums rose. Every transaction felt like a potential crime scene. Journalists, professors, and documentary creators dissected the case as a modern parable. How the internet builds heroes, and destroys them just as quickly. But as Callahan's evidence spread, public sentiment slowly shifted. Independent investigators began digging through ignored reports, uncovering multiple victims of the same fraud ring. People realized Derek might not be a criminal mastermind, but the most famous casualty of a sloppy, negligent investigation. Still, he remained behind bars, watching the world debate his innocence while his life slipped away. The story of Derek Bieri isn't just about cars. It isn't even just about crime. It's about the cost of trust in a world where trust is dangerous. Derek trusted his partners. He trusted the paperwork. He trusted the process. He trusted that honesty and transparency would shield him. Instead, that trust became the weapon used to destroy him. The internet that once celebrated him turned into a courtroom without rules. The justice system that should have protected him prioritized convenience over truth. The real criminals, those behind years of forged documents, walked free while Derek sat in a concrete cell. There are still unanswered questions. Why did authorities ignore Callahan's warnings years before? Why did investigators focus solely on Derek instead of the forgery network? Why did the missing partner get immunity while Derek got life? Why did the world convict him before the trial even started? Some stories end with justice. Some end with closure. Derek's story ends with a question mark, one the system still refuses to erase. Until authorities admit their mistakes. Until the real orchestrators are caught. Until the full truth is revealed. Derek Bieri's case remains one of the most tragic examples of how quickly a man's life, legacy, and future can be stolen, not by cars, but by a broken system. And as millions continue to watch Vice Grip Garage reruns, wondering how a man who preached honesty ended up in prison, one truth remains. Sometimes the person blamed first is the last person who should have been blamed at all. If you found this story shocking, eye-opening, or heartbreaking, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future documentaries. And click the next video shown on your screen to continue exploring stories the world needs to hear. The truth about Derek's downfall wasn't written in one catastrophic moment. It was a slow collapse, and the last 48 hours were the breaking point. On the morning of October 13th, Derek woke up to a house that felt different. Quiet. Cold. Still. His phone buzzed non-stop, unknown numbers, withheld IDs, investigators, lawyers, journalists, all closing in at once. By noon, Vice Grip Garage sponsors had completely severed ties. His email inbox was flooded with termination notices. The same companies that once begged to put their names on his videos were now racing to distance themselves from him. At 3:27 p.m., federal authorities traced one of his encrypted messages to a rural tower in Minnesota. They were no longer asking questions. They were preparing to move in. By 10 p.m. that night, Derek made his final mistake. He packed a duffel bag. Not clothes. Not tools. Not money. Documents. Evidence. Files he never wanted anyone to see. Those 48 hours sealed his fate forever. When authorities raided Derek's unnamed storage unit, the internet exploded. What they found inside shouldn't have existed. Rows of dusty metal shelves. Stacks of old hard drives. And dozens of unedited Vice Grip Garage tapes, the ones he never uploaded. But the real shock wasn't the tapes. It was what was hidden behind them. A false wall. And behind that wall, it was a hidden operation that contradicted everything Derek had ever claimed to stand for. The small-town family guy who loved saving old cars was suddenly connected to an underground network worth millions. The public didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was there, sealed, cataloged, and logged. This discovery turned his case from a rumor into a crime empire. Buried deep in court records is a detail the media tried to gloss over. Before the sentencing, before the cameras, before the headlines, Derek Bieri asked for a private meeting with investigators. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't ask for leniency. He didn't ask to negotiate. He asked one single question. Can this stay away from my family? For nearly 2 hours, Derek spoke without interruption. But he didn't confess to everything. He confessed to only the crimes he believed were his fault, and stayed silent about the ones he refused to claim. Investigators suspected he was protecting someone. A partner. An accomplice. Someone still out there. The transcript of that meeting remains partially redacted. To this day, the missing pages have never been released. The courtroom was packed. Not because people hated Derek, but because no one could wrap their mind around the fall of a man who once inspired millions. When the judge entered, Derek never lifted his eyes. He stood still, jaw tight, hands folded. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. Each charge was a nail in a coffin Derek had built with his own hands. When the judge finally said the words, "Life imprisonment," there was no gasp from Derek. No anger. No plea. Just silence. A silence heavier than the sentence itself. Public reaction was chaos. Some fans cried betrayal. Others insisted he'd been framed. Forums erupted. Facebook groups split in half. Reddit went to war with itself. And then, a conspiracy theory surfaced. A rumor claiming Derek was punished because he knew too much about certain illegal groups in the automotive world. A rumor so widespread that federal officials were forced to release a statement dismissing it. But the rumor didn't disappear. It only grew. Even today, some followers swear Derek was a scapegoat, a sacrifice to protect the real criminals hiding behind corporations and collectors. But one thing was clear. The internet no longer viewed Derek as a creator. He had become a myth. A symbol. A warning. Prison was nothing like the quiet Minnesota shop where Derek used to revive forgotten machines. This was a world without engines, without tools, without the smell of gasoline, only steel bars, echoing hallways, and the constant hum of confinement. But Derek surprised everyone. He didn't break. He adapted. Ironically, the man who built a career saving dead cars was now saving prison machinery. Washing machines, rusted fans, broken metal doors, Derek repaired everything. The inmates called him the mechanic. Even inside a cage, he found a purpose. But the peace wouldn't last. Something darker was coming. Months after his sentencing, a documentary crew was granted controlled access to Derek. They expected a broken man. A guilty man. A man begging for redemption. But the Derek who walked into that interview room wasn't broken. He was calm. Measured. Almost too calm. When the interviewer asked, "Did you really do everything they accused you of?" Derek leaned forward, stared into the camera, and said, "Not everything." The crew froze. His expression didn't change, but his eyes did. There was weight there, knowledge, fear. He continued. "Some things they blamed me for belonged to someone else. Someone they couldn't get to." The warden shut the interview down immediately. The clip was never officially aired. But a leaked audio snippet circulated online. Fans dissected it for months. Who was he protecting? Who was still out there? The interview only deepened the mystery. There were rumors, whispers from guards, half-written logbooks, redacted visitor entries. Someone had visited Derek, someone whose name never appeared publicly. A man. Tall. Quiet. Well-dressed. Driving a black SUV with no plates. He stayed only 12 minutes. No handshake. No eye contact. No visible emotion. After he left, Derek didn't speak for the rest of the day. The next morning, he requested isolation. No workshops. No yard time. No meals with others. Just silence. Whoever that man was, he changed something. Some believed he was tied to the underground vehicle network. Others believed he was a government agent. A few believed he was someone from Derek's past, someone powerful. But the truth? No one has ever confirmed his identity. Not even now. 3 months later, a sealed envelope addressed to Derek's family was intercepted. It was never delivered. It sits locked in an evidence file. What was inside? Authorities revealed only one detail. It wasn't a confession. It was a warning. A warning written in Derek's handwriting. They are coming for you next. Who? Why? What danger was he talking about? Investigators classified the letter. The media never received access. The family stayed silent. And the mysteries surrounding Derek Bieri grew even darker. Before his arrest, Derek had been restoring a car, a rare, barely documented model he refused to talk about publicly. Fans thought it was just another vice grip garage mystery build. But during a post-arrest investigation, officials discovered something strange. The car wasn't being restored, it was being altered. Modified. Rebuilt. Upgraded in ways that didn't match any legal blueprint. Hidden compartments. Reinforced panels. A sealed chamber built under the rear seat. What was the car for? Who was he building it for? The project was seized, disassembled, photographed, and locked away. Some officers joked it looked like a smuggling vehicle. Others didn't laugh. They saw something else, something designed for a job far more dangerous. To this day, that car remains unsolved evidence. 7 months into his sentence, Derek was approached with an offer, one that could have completely changed his fate. Late at night, escorted by 2 guards, he was taken to a secured conference room. No cameras. No recordings. No official paperwork. Just 3 people sitting across from him. A federal investigator. A transport crime specialist. And a high-ranking official who never stated his name. They offered Derek what no one expected. A deal. If he cooperated. If he revealed the identities of the real masterminds behind the automotive black market network. If he exposed the hidden supply chain. They would reopen his case. Not to release him. Not to reduce his sentence dramatically. But to move him to a minimum security facility, a place where life would be easier, quieter, safer. Derek listened without saying a word. When they finished, he finally responded. "You think I'm the only one who paid the price?" The room fell silent. He refused the deal. Not out of loyalty. Not out of pride. Out of fear. He knew that speaking up wouldn't save him, it would destroy anyone he cared about. The officials left the room frustrated. The deal was dead. And Derek's life sentence became unshakable. Just when things seemed to settle, chaos erupted. A violent riot broke out in Derek's unit, the kind that spreads like wildfire through a prison already on edge. Doors slammed. Alarms screamed. Inmates ran in every direction, some seeking revenge, others simply survival. Derek didn't run. He shielded a younger inmate who had nothing to do with the violence, a kid terrified out of his mind. Security footage later showed Derek pulling him behind a steel table, protecting him from blows, blocking attacks with his own body. Guards stormed the unit with tear gas and batons. In the aftermath, Derek was found on the floor, injured but alive, blood on his hands, none of it his own. The warden reviewed the footage personally. For the first time, Derek received a written commendation. Acted with courage and restraint. Ironically, it was the first positive mark he'd ever earned in his entire criminal record. But for Derek, it wasn't heroism. It was instinct. The same instinct that made him save cars nobody cared about, now made him protect a stranger nobody valued. 2 months later, a whistleblower leaked a document connected to Derek's case. A file labeled Operation Rustline, Confidential. This document implied something shocking. Derek's operation wasn't originally discovered by accident. He had been monitored for 3 years before his arrest. Someone powerful had been watching him. Not because he was dangerous. Not because he was a criminal mastermind. But because his garage restorations kept intersecting with vehicles already under federal investigation. Was it coincidence? Bad luck? Or something more sinister? The file suggested there were multiple high-profile names connected to the same illegal network. But all those names were redacted, black bars hiding truths the public was never meant to see. Only one name wasn't redacted. Derek Michael Bieri. The internet exploded. People began to question. Was Derek truly the criminal? Or was he a convenient face to plaster over a much larger operation? The truth remained buried under classified ink. One particular night became legend among inmates and guards. A total blackout. Every light. Every camera. Every alarm system gone. For 11 minutes, the entire prison fell into darkness. Guards scrambled. Inmates whispered. Rumors spread like wildfire. In the pitch-black silence, Derek stayed seated on his bunk, unmoving. When the lights finally returned, a guard noticed something chilling. A message had been scratched into the concrete wall of Derek's cell. Fresh. New. Unreadable by cameras because they were offline. 4 words. It was never me. Whether Derek wrote it or someone else entered his cell during the blackout. No one ever proved either. The mystery deepened. Weeks later, a private investigator looking into the case uncovered footage, grainy, blurry, but real. It showed the same black SUV that visited Derek in prison. Parked outside the storage unit investigators raided months earlier. The same vehicle. The same man. The same time frame. The conclusion was terrifying. This man had access to Derek before his arrest, and after his imprisonment. Whoever he was. He wasn't trying to help Derek. He was making sure Derek stayed silent. Maybe Derek wasn't the mastermind. Maybe he wasn't the architect of a criminal empire. Maybe he was just the one who got caught. And the real orchestrator? Still out there. Still free. Still watching. Months after the blackout, prison maintenance workers were repairing ventilation lines above Derek's cell when they discovered something unusual. A small, folded piece of paper hidden inside the vent. It was old. Crinkled. Edges burned, as if someone tried to destroy it, but didn't finish the job. The guards assumed it was contraband. But when they opened it, they froze. It was a handwritten message. A message addressed, not to his family, not to lawyers, not to investigators, but to the world. The letter contained only 3 lines. I wasn't supposed to be the face of this. There are names you will never hear. If you're reading this, it's already too late. The note was immediately confiscated, sealed, and removed from all official records. But one guard, the one who found it, leaked the contents anonymously online. Within hours, it spread across Reddit, Facebook groups, Discord servers, and conspiracy forums. Some believed it was a cry for help. Others believed it was Derek taunting the system. Many believed it was proof he wasn't the mastermind, but a pawn. The prison denied the note's authenticity. The government refused to comment. The family stayed silent. But the handwriting? Matched Derek's perfectly. For many, this final message wasn't closure. It was the beginning of a bigger, darker mystery. One that suggested Derek's story, his arrest, his sentencing, his silence, was only a small part of something much larger. Something that may never be uncovered.